My name is Kirsten Johnson, and I'm with Humanitarian U, and we're doing a podcast series on professionalization of the humanitarian sector or professionalism in the humanitarian sector. And I have with me today Chris Houston, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Chris Houston. I'm a field worker for Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders. I've worked in Papua New Guinea, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Turkey, and Pakistan. I've also done a little bit of work with the Canadian Red Cross. I serve on the board of directors of MSF Canada. I run the disaster simulation with Humanitarian U, and I coordinate a global health module and the Global Health Education Initiative at University of Toronto. Thanks for having me here today.
Well, it's wonderful, and thank you for joining us. So, just let's sort of focus the conversation a bit around MSF, Médecins Sans Frontières, or Doctors Without Borders, and this topic of professionalization to start, if you don't mind, seeing as you have quite a history working in the field with MSF, and you're on the board of directors. So, where does MSF stand with the concept or of professionalization?
Well, MSF was founded in 1971. In 1971, basically, we had groups of doctors taking suitcases full of medicine to disasters that happen throughout the world. I think MSF learned very early on that in order to be impactful in this work, you have to professionalize. You have to have professional medics that have skills relevant to the areas you're working. You have to have a team of logistical staff to support these health and interventions. I think it's been abundantly clear to MSF from the beginning that you have to be professional. The business that we're in is the business of saving lives. It's not a hobby. It's a very important task, and to do that properly, there's no question that you have to do it in a professional way, and that you have to be seeking to make sure that your teams are as professional as possible.
And how does MSF do that exactly? I mean, I know that MSF requires health practitioners to be finished their training and to be licensed providers in their own countries. And so, how do they ensure that this idea or concept of professionalism is adhered to in the field, especially when they're practicing with a team that not only comprises themselves but also people that are working in logistics and other areas in the humanitarian sphere, which is so multidisciplinary.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, MSF has 31,000 staff. Any one time it changes, but we have about 31,000 staff, and the thing that's often missed is that 90% of those staff are national staff in the country that we're working, and 10% are international staff, expats, if you like me. And there's probably a different answer for both those groups, but they come together quite nicely. The international staff are employed because they are experts in the field that they work, and because they bring an aspect of independence. They're independent from the local politics, from the local trouble that's going on, and so you have your international staff who are highly trained, and they will be employed because they're already competent in their field and given additional training. And then your local staff, that's going to vary a lot depending on where you work. If you go to South Sudan that doesn't have a functioning education system, then you're going to find that a lot of people will be employed with a very basic skill set, and they'll be given a lot of training from the international staff. Or if you go to somewhere like Pakistan, where I was recently, then you'll find that we actually are able to employ people who are very highly skilled. And so it depends on the context. But what you find is that the international staff provide a lot of training to the national staff on the ground. And then also there's training given to the international staff, training on how to train and how to be professional. So I think it varies very much depending on which group we're talking about.
Interesting. Talking about national staff and work in the field, I understand that there's been a lot of difficulty around some human resource issues in terms of finding people to work, given that MSF hospitals and missions have been targeted as of late. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're talking about is the challenges that we faced in Syria in particular.
Right. Yes.
Last year, our facilities in Syria were attacked over 63 times. That's the facilities that we have ourselves and the ones that we support. We
63 times
yeah
in
yeah,
1 year.
and that's last year alone. Yeah, we had a hospital attacked in Afghanistan in Kunduz, and our facilities in Yemen have been struck as well. Um, it's a difficult challenge for us. But I don't think it is a recruitment challenge for us. I mean, I think the people are still determined to to do the task that we do, despite these challenges. It is a challenge for us. It's an unacceptable challenge. I don't. I'm not an expert in how we will respond to that. But all I can say is it's an unacceptable situation. Hospitals should not be targeted. The hospitals are protected under international humanitarian law via the Geneva Conventions. It means that the facilities don't exist in certain places because they've been bombed. I mean, Kunduz in Afghanistan doesn't have the hospital that it had before, and so it leaves populations without access to healthcare that they so desperately need. Um, a solution has to be found to that. It's difficult to find the right words because it's such a sad state of affairs where people are targeting hospitals and civilians and people that go to help.
And,
But it's increasingly a problem in Syria at the moment, and in Yemen as well.
right. And I mean, MSF has been such a stronghold in those countries and those emergencies to date, doing such great work. But you know, it sort of creates an interesting question or a dialogue that needs to be had around this concept, and we're talking about. Kind of people becoming professional humanitarians and career humanitarians now, and this is a recognized career, and people are advancing and not only leading missions but eventually leading organizations and such. And I just wonder, given that state of affairs where we see an increase in the targeting of humanitarian organizations or different, for example, the hospitals you speak about, how that is going to intersect with people moving in this direction and calling it a career choice, and us trying to tie in this notion of being professional as professionals and making the world understand that this is a very important area that needs professional attention and professionals to work in it. So I'm just curious, do you see how the future might play out?
I mean, like I said, we have 31,000 staff in MSF, and we lost a number of them in Afghanistan last year. It's, that said, this is quite specific to particular contexts: Yemen, Afghanistan, and Syria. Um, does it have an effect on people's choice to move into this career? I'm sure it does. It is a job that carries a certain amount of risk, um, and it's the responsibility of the organisation to manage that risk as best we can. And hence, you'll see our strong response to such attacks. But I think it's also not typical of humanitarian work, or nor is it typical even of MSF. And of course, the vast majority of humanitarians have incident-free careers, and this is highly unusual, but still not acceptable. It's not. I don't think we've seen it affect our ability to recruit or retain people. I think the people that go on humanitarian missions are well briefed on the risks that they take when they go, and I think the people who apply for humanitarian jobs are aware of that beforehand. So at this point, I don't think it's had a negative effect on our ability to recruit and retain people. That said, it's an unacceptable trend that has to be reversed because perhaps ultimately it will. But for now, there seems to be enough people that still want to do this work. I'll pop the champagne the day that MSF runs out of work to do, and the day that we don't have to cross borders and help people because everybody's okay. That's really the day we all look forward to at MSF, the day that we're all unemployed.
Of course.
But sadly, the opposite is happening. Sadly, we're not managing to get to all the places we want to get to. Sadly, the number of conflicts in the world is escalating. And while the number of humanitarians continues to grow, then there's a general lack of them in the places where it's most acutely needed.
Right.
And so there's an overwhelming demand for humanitarian action. There's an underwhelming response to it, particularly in the biggest of emergencies, which is Yemen, Iraq, Central African Republic, South Sudan. The places that need it the most are the places that are not filled with humanitarian workers. We spoke before about Nepal and Haiti and how everybody rushed to them. Everybody's not rushing to the big emergencies, and the big emergencies have conflict, and that makes it very difficult to work. And when you have conflict, then it makes it complicated to work there. It makes it very difficult to position yourself as a neutral actor between all these warring parties. But that's what we must do, and that's what we need more of.
Now, sort of turning the conversation to yourself personally, you've been a seasoned, you've been in the field, and you're a seasoned humanitarian, and now you're also kind of doing work in academia and teaching and the like. And I'm just wondering how you consider yourself to be a professional humanitarian, or if you do, and what makes you what traits or competencies, or what makes you a professional in this field. How did you get there?
How did I get to be a humanitarian worker?
Well, do you consider yourself a professional? And then how did you get to be at that point that you considered yourself a professional?
Well, I mean, I suppose I always considered myself to be a professional from the moment that it was my job. I think when I first started humanitarian work, I went overseas to Sri Lanka with 300 kilograms of medicine, construction equipment, and water filters that I'd got from friends and colleagues, and I took them to Sri Lanka and I gave them to the Red Cross. I don't think I was a professional at that point. I think I was an amateur at that point. And I came back and I volunteered for the Red Cross for a number of years. And I was still a volunteer at that point. I think I would consider myself to be a professional humanitarian from the point the MSF employed me, and that became my full-time job. So I consider myself a professional from that point onwards. But I think what defines professionalism is not just the fact that you're paid, but the fact that you're constantly learning, you're constantly getting better, you're constantly questioning yourself to if you're doing your best or if there's better ways to do it. And I certainly have been on a long journey of hopefully refining my skills and learning them over the years. Firstly as a logistician, but then as a people manager, as a project coordinator, then that brings a whole new set of challenges and tasks to manage people is a bit of an art. So I think I've always been a professional from the point I've been employed, but I think I've got better at it over the years, I hope.
Wonderful. It's a great answer. So I guess MSF has played a big role in your professional career development, and that's great. So Chris, just as we tie up our podcast, how can people, if they have questions for you, access you if they want to comment on this or feedback? How can they do that?
Well, people, if you're listening to this, then I guess you're on the webpage of Humanitarian U, and it also so happens that I manage the social media for Humanitarian U, so it'll be relatively easy for you to follow up with any questions. Just go on Twitter and tag your questions with our handle, which is @Humanitarian U, and then you'll get a response very quickly. So if you have any questions, hit us on Twitter @Humanitarian U. I'm also on Twitter @Chris_M_H. And I would love to hear from anybody who has listened to this and has any questions. Please let us know.
Thank you. That's wonderful. we'll sign off here, and we'll look forward to the next time. Thank you so much for your discussion today, Chris.
Thanks for your questions. It was delightful. Thank you. Bye.
Super. Thank you. Bye.